You are listening to The Edge, a podcast for personal development junkies and visionaries living right at the precipice of oh shit meets fuck yeah. I'm Nadia Munda, an embodiment and relationship coach and a lover of all edges. Stick around to listen to raw, unpolished conversations where we explore our personal and collective edges in all their erotic glory. Welcome to The Edge.
Boom.
I don't usually say that. We just go right in. I have like an intro pre-recorded.
I'm not that professional. I do my own intro.
I know. I like it.
So what do you want to talk about?
Well, the first thing that popped up, because I suddenly was like, oh my God, we have to have ideas. But I don't know that that's necessarily where we want to start. But I'll put it into the space and we'll see if there's anything that wants to be said about it. But we were having a conversation. It wasn't right when you pressed record, but earlier about being erotic versus being, what was the word? Horny. We use the word horny.
Mm-hmm.
Like what the difference between those two are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the seed.
That's what we're going with?
I don't know. You asked me if I have anything. That's the one I've got at the...
So how does it feel different to you? Because you were saying that you don't experience horniness.
Yeah, I hate that word too.
Inspiration.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, horny to me as a word also just makes me think of a very young teenage boy.
Or like you've got a mosquito bite.
Yeah, like an itch and
scratch it.
Even the word horny, like if you think about horns, and now you're horny, like there's this very aggressive,
pointy
energy. Yeah, like energy to it. So I think that's what comes up in my system around horniness, but also like when I think about horny, I think about an experience or like a state that people have where they need to like fix it
or release it
or relieve it, sneeze it out.
Yeah, that's ultimately what for me, energetically speaking, horniness, I understand that as a deficiency of energy. Whereas if a person is full, they're going to be responsive and available to sexual energy or to arousal. But it's like you're full, so you're not hungry. There's not a need for it for relief.
That takes us to Eros, which is life force, which is the erotic is from the word Eros. And so here we are. If you are full of life force, you're full, you're not deficient.
Mm-hmm.
So they are, in fact, maybe even opposites.
Complete opposites.
Yeah.
Because one is needing something to be relieved and the other is wanting to share something.
Oh, that's cool. I like that frame.
For me, Eros is like it's coming from an overflow. It's like a celebration of the overflow. Whereas horny is what can I get? What can I siphon?
Ooh, yes. Extraction, siphoning, all the things that we're doing. I'm going to take a left turn here, but bear with me. Just all the things we're doing to the earth.
Deep.
Mm-hmm. But like there's
but it's true.
Yeah, there's like a collective energy of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the antidote and the medicine to not just our own state, but the state of the earth and the state of our home, which is our bodies and the earth, is to fill up with more life force.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool. But yeah, I think that, the experience of being in an erotic state to me feels it's going to be different, for obviously a woman and a man, but like for a woman, it will often express as like a vibrancy and an expression and a like responsiveness, like you were saying earlier, and what else? Like there's just this like I keep seeing like the movement, like it's sort of like undulation is how I see it.
I experience it from a woman as pulsation. There's a throbbing that starts to come up through the channels and through the center line of the body, and there's like a percolation. It's like water boiling.
Okay. Yes, I feel pulsing. Yes, I feel it. Yeah, I think I'm so curious to hear what's the man's experience. So I know you shared the experience of a woman as a man, but how does it feel like to be erotic in a male body?
Firm, focused, hyper alert. And then there's different levels of it. For me, that's the beginning of the penetration. That's the beginning of the penetrative energy that starts to wake up. There's like a grounding down through the legs that then comes back up, and firmness starts to come in, and uprightness starts to come through. And from that point, depending on the man's integration of his, I guess, his masculine and feminine, for use of better words, it's if he can move into receptivity in certain poles of his body, he can start to ride waves like her, but in a way where externally he's still quite still, rather than flapping like a fish. But the issue is that most men tend to get very identified with the feminine experience during sex. So then he starts to take on a lot of those movements and sometimes those sounds, and can be quite goal orientated as well, which is not actually feminine. It's just more distorted versions of that energy.
Yeah, it goes back to the siphoning.
Yeah, and then he wants to release and come and ejaculate, and he's chasing. Then he starts to chase an experience, which means he completely loses contact with the woman that he's attempting to be in connection with.
Okay, I can really feel that. I'm trying to think also, like I'm asking myself in my head the question I just asked you, which is like, as a woman, how do I experience a man in his erotic versus in his horniness? And I will say I get a lot of clients coming and talking to me about this, where they often will think that there's something wrong with them. And I know I've had that experience in my life where I'm like, oh, is it me? Why am I not opening? Or why is this not pleasurable? Or why do I suddenly feel a disconnect? Or why, and I see that in a lot of women, and they're coming to me and asking me like, what's actually happening? There's this feminine instinct of something's a little off, or there's a moment where I notice a shift, or there's something about this particular partner or person that I'm interacting with that feels off. And when we sit down and we pull apart the threads, it often is connected to that distinction between feeling like, oh, there's someone trying to extract from me and siphon and pull because they need something. And then someone who's there just having an experience with me, which is very different. Like, I'm just here, I'm present. I'm penetrating you with my presence, whether I'm actually penetrating you or not, it doesn't matter. But, like.
You mean from the male perspective?
Yeah, that's like the erotic. That's the experience of the erotic male. Is you're here, you're with me, we're in an experience together. I feel you present and attuned. I'm not feeling the siphoning. The siphoning is when it turns into the horny archetype.
For me, that feels like the first stage of a man's development. And then after that, if he stays in his own presence work, then his eroticism just becomes nothingness. So when he plugs in and when he penetrates and when he makes contact, now he's essentially there as, to get deep for a second, as a vessel for God or a vessel for source. So he starts to be a channel, like a conduit of listening to the energy moving through him in response to her, and then also listening very deeply to how she's responding to him. So there's just like an overall watching and a containment. I feel that's present, where there's a certain level of holding in him, and now he needs to be able to learn to balance the holding with feeling. So he's not going so into the holding that he starts to disconnect and not feel his heart or other parts of his experience.
Right.
So for me, it's always a line, because then if he goes too deeply into heart or feeling, well, now the experience will snatch him from himself. And then he'll either be pulled into ejaculation, or he'll be overcome by that energy. So, and that's one thing that I see working with men in semen retention, or speaking to women who are with men who are attempting to practice semen retention, where sometimes there's a very heavy leaning on the control aspect of his experience, which means that she feels disconnected from.
And how can a man be in this whole experience without the control? Because it sounds like the control comes in with a purpose.
Yes. Well, the control that comes up in sex is going to be relative. It's going to be like a magnifying glass to the rest of his life, and where he is controlling in his life, especially around his own self-worth, his value system, how he feels he needs to behave in the world to be like a good, strong man. Just to use that you can put your elbow there. Yeah. The table will not fall over. But yeah, I just feel that sex is a magnifying glass for how a person does everything.
Yeah.
Like all of that will show up in sex. So a huge part for men is if he's allowing himself to learn how to surrender to parts of himself internally, because no man should ever be expecting a woman to be able to open or surrender with him there if he's not opening or surrendering to something in himself. Otherwise, he won't be trustable in what he does with that opening and surrendering. So for women, I would always urge you to be aware of, well, what has this man in his own life actually moved into some form of surrender, not even surrender, but just following. What's this man following? What is his goal here? What is his mission here? And what's leading him? What's leading his behaviors, his movements? Is it about what he can get? Is it about what he's here to bring? Is he being led by, I don't know, some coach or some guru or some sports team? Or is he being led by his ability to feel what moves through him? Does he question everything that moves through him? Like, there's so many little nuanced pieces that I feel make up the whole. But what it comes down to ultimately in everything I'm saying is that a man who does not prioritize being is going to be led by insanity. And then he's going to be plugging that insanity into the women that he's engaging with. Beingness is the quickest way to internal wisdom for a man's experience. And if he's not prioritizing that, I would say that it's not so trustable in many regards. Beingness is the antidote to insanity.
What's your definition of insanity? Can you say?
Conditioning, being conditioned by all of the siphoning around us collectively from internet, social media, technology, companies, big pharma, like every type of corporate structure that is here to essentially extract from us by convincing us that we're not enough already.
Yeah.
Bigotry, lies, all these different aspects of conditioning, for me, that is insanity. A person's inability to sit comfortably inside of their own skin and not be bouncing off the walls in that experience. That would be a form of sanity for me.
Wow, there's so many pieces here. I'm trying to feel into where else I have some questions. I guess what I want to put myself in the shoes of a woman listening. And she's like, okay, so I heard on this podcast that I need to check in and see, like, is my man surrendering? And I know you said that wasn't the best word, but like sort of feeling, like allowing himself to feel and move or be moved by his...
Another way to say this is, does the man I'm with, does he have a certain level of spaciousness in his own life that he prioritizes, where he can contemplate his own existence, where he can question things that are happening around him, where he can question his behaviors, where he can examine his motivations for certain behaviors and certain desires. That's, I guess, a more practical way. of saying it. If the man is just go, 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 go from his phone to the computer to his job to the hobby to the men's group to the, if there's just that and there's no ability for him to just be and purge, just so his mind can purge a little bit, so he can start to feel his feet on the ground. If that's not present, I would say that would be concerning.
Yeah. Hi, love. Just wanted to take a moment out of this conversation to let you know there are so many ways to start your embodiment and intimacy journey. It is not necessarily having to work privately in a coaching container with me. There is a whole page on nadiamanla.com under the tab Self-Study that is dedicated to anyone who's looking to just start their journey. So whether it's an embody at home class that you want to start to bring into your morning or evening routine to just move the energy, to explore your different feminine archetypes, or maybe it's something in the world of intimacy and sexuality. I've got master classes from everything around energetic sex to exploring monogamish type relationships and lots more. So definitely go take a look at the page, nadiamanla.com, and then go to the tab that's self-study. And for those of you who are here on this podcast listening, I've gotten so many DMs from beautiful, devoted listeners sharing with me how much of an impact these conversations have had. And I really just wanted to give back the love with a special 50% off code. So if you go to the checkout on any of the classes that are there and you put in podcast love, all one word, in the coupon code on the way out, right? You will get that 50% off as a thank you from me. I am so fired up around the topic of embodiment and intimacy that I can't not nudge you in the direction of actually getting into the practices, and that is the place to start. So definitely go check that out. And of course, if you do want to work privately with me, that is always an option. Just shoot me an email, nadia@nadiamanla.com. Let me know what you're looking for. Everything from, you can start with a single session. And if you let me know you're from the podcast, I'll give you 50% off on that single session as well. And so we can talk more about that over email. So either DM me at nadiamanla.com on Instagram or shoot me an email, nadia@nadiamanla.com. I will see you there. Now back to the episode.
Because he's caught up himself, and now she's with a man who is completely controlled.
Yeah, so in a way, she's now experiencing the collective, not him.
Yes.
She's experiencing that through
exactly, because he's not even experiencing him.
Right.
Because he's too afraid to slow down to feel him. So now he's never bringing him to her. He's bringing the collective to her.
The chaotic world of Instagram.
Yeah, which is what she's being and has been so mishandled by.
And then she's like, but why does it hurt? It's like, well.
And I also want to say there's no perfection in this. Like, there's no perfect version of this. Like, the man will go in and out of that consistently and continuously. But just making sure that there's at least some glimmer in this man's eye. Like, there's a little flicker of life force that, he is inquiring. And then for you as a woman, I guess the question. I was
going to ask that.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'm not actually going to answer what you were going to ask, but what I was going to say is, for her as a woman, can she then choose that regardless of where this man is in his process, in his journey, if I'm here with him, am I willing to love him exactly where he is and not have this like fantasy version of where she would want him to be? Because I feel the polarity world does a lot of that, fucking distorted what a man needs to be, what a woman needs to be. And it becomes more about what can I get from this other person or what they're not giving me.
Yeah.
But I think a huge part of, I guess, the compassion and the understanding and the care is, well, if I'm going to be here, can I love this person as fully as possible, exactly where they're at?
Well, in the polarity world, at least the lineage I learned from, there also is the flip side, which is you should go first, be generous, like give your love before your love can then start to inspire the other person into their potential and their and possibility. And so I think that with any type of work, to any body of work, or like philosophy, people will take what they want from it and leave the rest.
Totally.
And they will, and of course it's way more convenient to be like, oh, I like the part where I take something and where I have high expectations of the other person, and so I'm going to just like, and it's not conscious, right? But a lot of people are just taking those teachings. But what about the teaching of, no, you need to go first. It's important, for you to be in this energy of love and generosity and working on yourself in order to evoke more consciousness and mindfulness out of your partner.
Yes. If they're ready, obviously.
Totally. And it's like, that's also part of the teaching. So I think sometimes what I get upset about is like, we're throwing away what, how they say, the baby with the bathwater, which is such a weird saying. Like, we have a lot of weird sayings, like also two birds with one stone. It's very violent.
Why are we trying to kill birds with stones?
I don't know why. I'm not sure.
This is before Christ.
Yeah. So, but this idea of like throwing it all out, it's like, no, I actually, like, my life changed and my relating hugely upgraded through a lot of polarity work. And I see the distorted way in which people then take it and create these convenient stories of, oh, well, he's not conscious enough, or she's not open and receptive enough, or and it's like, okay, you guys, like, you're just being lazy. You're not going first. Okay, so I did have a question that I thought you were going to go into, but you were right. You actually went in a slightly different direction, which is, I wanted to ask about the woman's side. So what we talked about, what the men can do if they are going into more siphoning energy or less consciousness. What can the women do when they're experiencing nonstop horniness? Because I mean, there's a lot of people that also I speak to, and who, just feel the constant, like, must have sex all the time. And I get really curious. Like, I actually do not have like a theory or an answer or a judgment about it. But I do wonder sometimes, I'm like, oh, is it just different systems? We have different levels of hormones. We all operate differently. We have different libidos. Or is it an energy?
I feel that most women in like our societies and the Western world especially have learned sex through men who have learned sex through porn. So the whole frequency that sex and her sex has been wrapped up into is deeply distorted, and a lot of it is driven towards her performance, that she has to look a certain way or be a certain way. So within that dynamic already, she's having to turn her back on her own innate way of being so deeply that this creates agitation and frustration internally. This agitation and frustration, when it starts to touch up against sexual energy, now needs relief. It needs to be expressed in a way that is almost self-harming, right? There's like an abusive, masochistic streak to it that can be really rooted in that horniness, especially if this woman has only ever known her sexuality through, let's say, her clitoris, or through very hard, forceful, fast types of sex.
Oh my God, I can just hear the people on the internet, especially like the sex coaches and like, all the like orgasmic meditation clit business and all that stuff, being like, taking the soundbite and being like, Chris Bill, Nadia Mama said, blah, blah, blah. Because, well, I'm curious. Well, I know, of course, the internet is.
Well, I didn't finish what I was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just was.
Like, if there's a point that you have exactly on what, because I just don't want to lose the.
No, keep going. If you still have the thought, go for it.
Yeah, the horniness for me is just the impatience. Like, what I've learned the most about feminine energy, and even just to make it clearer, not just feminine energy, but just a woman's energetic system, is that the deepest, most nourishing aspects of her can only start to swell up to the surface through patience. If she's there to try to get something, or if she feels she's there to perform for something, that's going to have her be in a very kind of peak-driven experience, which then also will default to creating more horniness because she's losing energy through that experience, which brings her into more deficiency, which agitates her system more, which then brings up that kind of yin deficiency style of sexual expression. But for me, the main thing is that we have rushed women so deeply in their body to the point where she doesn't know she works any differently. So now she rushes herself, even in self-pleasure. She's rushing herself because that's all she possibly knows. And if she was just to sit still and be quiet for a moment with herself, that may be too confronting, or she may have to feel all the numbness that's there. And that can, that can be not such a pleasant or exciting experience. But I feel like we've kind of stolen her from herself in that way by not taking the depth of time that's required for her body and her feminine orgasmicness, which is not horny, for that to start to open to the surface. But that's just my experience through the work I do. But yeah, I'd love for you to share what it is.
I mean, it's my experience too, but I will say I find myself being a bit more the odd one out amongst women, where I sometimes do, when I check in very deeply, I know that this is my truth and I feel pretty comfortable with it. But occasionally, if I just like sort of project out of myself, I can have these moments of self-doubt, like, and that's what got us started into like, oh, I don't really feel like I'm not like horny versus erotic. Like, yes, I experience myself as a very erotic being. I don't experience myself as a horny being. Or even like incredibly sexual. I mean, I am sexual. I can be very sexual, but I need something to inspire me into that. And I guess, I mean, some people could argue that everything inspires them into that. So then I go like, oh, maybe that's like a place of evolution for me. So it's like, as a woman, I'm sharing all of this because I'm sharing all my intimate thoughts of like the moments where I doubt, like, oh, is this good? Is this not good? Like, how is this different? And I do think, I mean, ultimately what I can rest into that feels good is that everyone is a little bit different, but what you are saying is there is a rushedness and there is a way in which, and I see this in clients so much, where their experience is outsourced. So they're not having an experience. So it's the same like what you were talking about with the men. Like the women are also often, because we grew up with like body image stuff and magazines and the way the porn stars look, and everyone is moving, but they're moving and watching themselves through the lens of the other person or the world seeing them. So whether it's Instagram, like their community watching them, whether it's a man on a date watching them or their partner watching them, they aren't having the experience of how do I feel in this moment, in this outfit, on this chair, eating this food. It's more, how do I look? Or how do I present?
Right, how am I being perceived?
Yeah, do I tuck in more? And I've had this conversation countless times with very beautiful, like mature women who still are like, I catch myself doing the thing where I suck my belly in, or where I only show my good side of my face, or where, that all this behavior. And that's why I dedicated so much of my life to embodiment. Is in our embodiment practice, it's all about follow what feels good, not what looks good. And the more you start to get into the lifestyle of actually following what feels good instead of what looks good, the less you're outsourcing your image of yourself or your experience of yourself. But the problem is then social media came in and we went right back into the selfie culture and into this, this thread of narcissistic behavior that we all have, where it's like me, 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 which then means people are watching me. So now I'm very conscious of how am I being seen and perceived. And so that, if you think that does not translate into the bedroom, okay, like that is 100%. You're bringing all of the ways that you filter on Instagram into the way that you filter in the bedroom with a man. for sure. Or whoever you sleep with. But, here we're always talking about men and women. And
how archaic of us.
Well, we speak to the hetero couple primarily. I mean, a lot of these things can apply to anyone, really, but I do think it can most apply to a man with a woman.
I feel what you said kind of loops perfectly back around to when you asked earlier on, what does it mean for like a man to be in insanity? Well, I feel this is a woman, a part of a woman's version of it, when she has prioritized how she's perceived versus being deeply in like rhythmical contact with her own undulating on a moment-to-moment basis.
Yeah.
That's how she removes or lets go of her insanity and comes back to what the truest thing is for her. And that's honestly, that's been the most challenging thing from a male perspective out in the world connecting with women is that is the most common infliction that women are living in. There's this level of self-hatred that is just like very sneakily being cultivated under the surface, where it's almost though she's unaware that she has a disdain for herself and that she's cutting her body open and pumping stuff into her. Like it's so normal that it's become so normalized that there's almost no avenue or channel to speak directly to it and to bring the love that it requires and the acceptance that it requires. So I feel if we can bring that into our lovemaking or sex or intimacy with one another as men or women, and keeping it really simple, like that's where the most profound experiences will come, is like when things are just deeply simple and ordinary and both people are just being very present.
I started thinking about like breast implants and all the other things that I don't even know the names of, I guess a Brazilian butt lift, and I don't know, there's, all the different cosmetic things, where, I mean, my general, very conceptual, cognitive stance is like to each his own, right? Like if you're someone who likes to wear this type of an outfit, great, that makes you feel good, good. If you want to get breast implants because that makes you feel good, cool. But I will say that a lot of women who have had breast implants, many of them who then had explants and took them back out, have come to me and shared that it never felt good. Doing yoga didn't feel good. Having sex didn't feel good. There was a lot of pieces that it actually messed with in their own experience. But of course, they felt better because they looked better, which is, again, the problem. It's a symptom of the problem in itself, which is that, again, we're outsourcing our experience to how do I look versus how do I feel.
Yes.
Right. And then it's like, okay, now I feel good because I look good. That's still outsourcing to how you look instead of how you feel. Because if you're, getting your breasts massaged or sucked or whatever, and you're not really having a good experience of it, but you're like, but they look good. It's like, oh, wow, that's where we're prioritizing things in society.
Right.
And I think that also, okay, I'm going to say one more thing. I'm on a roll now. I was also thinking about, as you were talking, how by women being less embodied and prioritizing what other people perceive of them as instead of how they feel, what happens is society has lost the oracle. Because so much of the feminine body, which, could be also in a man, like I don't think that it's like specific to female physiological body, but there's something about when we feel ourselves deeply, we're more connected to our intuition, right? We can guide and mirror and reflect in a more transparent and truthful way what the collective is showing us, what the man in front of us is showing us, what the village needs, that sort of thing, the metaphorical village. I get that we don't all live in a village. And so without the oracle, what's happened, we now just have like political leaders who are leading us, like as humanity into the future. And then we're like, oh, something feels off. Why is there so much insanity? It's like, well, we lost the compass in that process.
I agree.
Yeah. And that compass is also in men, right? Like, it's like we each compass in a slightly different way. But I believe I'm curious what you think, but I believe it's the feminine in all of us that is the compass.
Even if we were to remove that word, the feminine, it's the presence in all of us. It's can we feel the nature in us? Are we alert to the seasons in us? The season of today, the season of this morning. Are we feeling beings, or are we leaning and leading from our mental constructs, which can generally be influenced by kind of anyone with an opinion? So I would kind of go to say that yes, it's deeply in women, and it's also very deeply in men. It's just deeply in humans when we're in contact, and when we can be present, and when we can actually relax into our somatic experience as individuals, we are going to be a lot more connected, and we're not going to make wilding out brash decisions that are impulsive and chaotic, and that's there to feed our sense of lack, because we'll feel full. So I feel when as a collective we're able to relax back into ourselves in a way where nothing else has actually worked, and it's exposed itself to be insane and to be anti-life, it's through the giving up and the relaxing back into just the reality of what we are and our mortality that we can start to make a lot more loving and compassionate and integrated decisions. But to me, everything that goes on is there because of a person's lack of internal beingness and sovereignty, and it's just distraction, and it's eating us. But yeah, I also completely agree with what you said and the way that you said it.
Well, it's interesting because, of course, it's the the yin yang, the me, we, it's the feminine, masculine, all the polarities, where you speak to the sovereignty, because of course as a man, like, that's probably a little bit more just present for you. But I also think for me, when I drop deep into feeling, I drop into the we, I drop into union, I drop into communion, I drop into like community, the circle. And I feel what does the circle need? What does the village need? What does the family need? What does the unit need?
Totally.
So of course I'm feeling myself, and there's a sovereignty piece in it. There's like, I have to feel myself to then feel the environment.
I think we're just speaking to different stages of it. So for me, I understand that I cannot be of benefit to the community if I myself am deranged and delusional. Like, I have to first get right with me, then I'll be able to hear the community or the union or the people around me.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, yeah, what you're saying is that's the most impactful level once it starts to spread through groups.
Yeah.
But the quality of any union is going to be directly connected to the quality of relationship that person has with themselves. That will dictate
100%.
The entire union, the entire community.
And that's why we're so sick as a society. Like, it all loops back, right? It's like a full spiral. It's like, because we don't have enough people aware to feel the sickness and to speak to the sickness and to be like, wait, something like is not right. And then the not rightness continues to disconnect us, which then continues to have us not speak to the thing. And so it's just getting worse and worse. And now we have, what do they call them? NPCs, I think, non-player primary characters. That's the new crazy trend I was trying to tell you about on TikTok.
Is it a gender?
It's literally impossible to explain in words. Have to see it.
So like mostly everything right now.
It's like, so people are like NPCing on TikTok, and then we've got like, it's actual insanity. You're 100% right. We're just so disconnected and going so out there. It's like, what is even going to bring us back? Like, we need...
Well, the fact that we overcorrect so deeply into insanity. Like, I really trust this period. I trust the fact that it's only this heightened because of the level of realignment that's going to be coming in. That'll be, beautiful and simple and aligned. But I feel with any level of increase in energy, like everything comes up to the surface.
It's gotten crazy. Yeah. Do you want to tell people more things?
Do you? Is there any topics or areas?
I gotta say, without coffee in my system, I feel I'm way less talkative than usual. I can't tell. Am I talking less than usual on our other podcasts? No, I'm still talking. Yes. I will always be the extrovert and teacher who has things to say. That's me. But let me tell you, it's definitely harder without a little. Oh, it's Dennis.
The squirrel is back.
The squirrel is eating his own tail, it looks like. Is that where they store things? No, he's just
in his tail.
I don't know. What is he doing? He's just
cleaning himself. He's being loving with himself.
Okay. Well, see, he knows how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess that's a message that's being channeled through Dennis the squirrel right now, which is it's your responsibility to treat your own insanity first. It's your responsibility to look after your energetic hygiene.
Lick your own tail.
Lick your own tail.
Don't take that. People are gonna. I don't know how they'll translate that one.
Well, I definitely know there's some people on the planet who identify as being squirrels, probably, or have tails, or identify as having tails. I believe they're called furries, or.
Yeah. I don't know much about that subculture.
So I doubt any of them are.
To it.
I don't think any of them are listening here, but if you do happen to be one of those folk, then clean your own tail, because no one's going to clean it for you.
Yeah, I feel we might be complete for today, for this non-caffeinated episode, brought to you by a little bit of tea.
Beautiful. Okay, well, thank you for listening. We hope this has been of benefit, or at least just amusing and entertaining to some degree. Anything you want to finish on, or do you feel complete?
Feel complete for today.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.
If you enjoyed the guest on this episode, you can head on over to the show notes to get more info on their bio, their work, their website, and all the good stuff. I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening. We would love for you to rate and review the show, and I'd love to know your takeaways from the episode. You can do that by DMing me on Instagram at Nadia Munla.